There we go. So we are recording this. All right, so here are our community agreements. Just be engaged, trust in our good intentions. Tell us how you feel and don't hold it back. We want to hear your comments and how you feel about the topics. That means bringing your identity, and then realize we may not get an end to some of our things we discuss, but we'll work on them. And this is our goal, just to continue on the acceleration of learning that we started this summer as a task force. And we're going to start today with talking about priority standards. And I'm just going to let Kristen McKinney kind of address that. She's been very involved with the priority standards as we were working through them. And just let her answer questions and give you kind of a summary of where we are, what's going on so far. So Kristen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Perfect, Cami, thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, and I do not have any slides. I see many of you on the call were involved in some of our content discussions specific to priority standards. So some of those slides would have been repeats, but instead, today, just kind of sharing the conversation of where we are and what, as of 3:51 on November 2nd, where we're headed next, knowing that every day we gain new information. So I first want to recognize that members of the task force have reached out both to me personally as well as to leadership here at DESE in email form and phone calls, and we truly do appreciate that. I first want to apologize on behalf of my co-facilitators if we have failed our job in articulating your thoughts. I know I'll address the elephant in the room first. Some of you may be aware of the conversation or the communication that came out from our office in regards to priority standards, and the communication relayed that the priority standards for the state level came out of recommendations from the task force. And I want to publicly acknowledge that I heard you guys loud and clear and have referenced your materials, and know that you stand behind that the process is a local decision. And so I apologize for that miscommunication on our behalf. And again, if you guys feel at any time, please speak up and let me know. But on behalf of Chip, Lisa, and I, we wanted to acknowledge that and state that we have cleared that communication and hope that it won't be miscommunicated in the future. With that, the purpose behind the state level priority standards was really a leadership initiative here at DESE for the sole fact that we have too many standards. That's a common comment that has come to our leadership from educators and superintendents and leaders across the state. And so in developing the priority standards that we have that are draft form right now, the why behind that was really the number of standards and getting that into a more workable number so that teachers had a more streamlined focus. So with that, conversations have come from these priority standards, developing or informing the development of some new assessments in the 4 core content areas and what that would look like. And so after these were drafted, we've shared them with countless numbers of stakeholders, from our individual content meeting groups to curriculum associations to higher education folks to national experts to content organizations as well. And so we've collected, we had over 1,000 responses among the 4 individual feedback forms and many responses to the consultancy feedback forms that were held in those virtual meetings. So this morning we took that feedback and began analyzing it internally so that we will be able to report to our leadership team really 4 general categories. that we felt were high in the responses that we got, that individuals were commenting. And those 4 subcategories really focus around what's the purpose of these documents? Is it instructional? Is it assessment? Was this a focus to change the accountability system? That whole category, we've lumped that feedback into that one piece. The second is around we're in the middle of a global pandemic. This is too much for teachers right now. We can't handle anything else. That was another group of feedback. A third group centered around House Bill 1490 in that whole conversation of politics. And then the other is the document that you guys created, the local versus state. Is this really something the state should be taking on, or is this more of a local level? So I know science has completed the first look at the feedback, and all of our comments really fell into those 4 categories. My other friends are completing theirs as we speak. So from here, we'll start talking with our Lisa Serena will take this to our executive leadership to share with them, and then really think about what are our next steps. Do we bring this back to some sort of drawing board and form some work groups? Do we reach out to organizations? What does next steps look like? I think overwhelmingly at 3:56 on November 2nd, we can say we're not signing these over and saying this is it, these are good to go. There's some revision and much more detail needed on these. So if another meeting arises and you'd like to be interested in that, always reach out to us. We'd love to have you. But other than that, there's not more details to share at this point. So I'll open it up for some questions if you have questions.
Thank you, Kristen. And anyone that would like to speak, please feel free to unmute and ask a question.
Of course, I have a question.
Of course, go ahead.
So basically, as you talking about those 4 categories, those are the 4 categories that you were typically seeing in the responses to the documents. Yeah,
there were a couple times, and please know I'm speaking for science. I briefly looked at the other content areas, but there were a few instances where people would say, I think, you need to use this specific standard instead of this specific one or that. But overwhelmingly, people weren't saying, switch this for that. They were saying comments that went into those 4 categories. Like, for example, I tried to pull some comments that were examples of each of those. So for like the purpose and the accountability column, these proposed standards are too broad to continue the current assessments. This exercise of prioritizing standards is not based on any research. For local versus state, people said, as stated in the power and the process, a few districts have already done this work. It would be undoing a lot of that work, and they've got standards-based report cards, and they've got common formative assessments and that sort of comment. Talking about we can't handle anything else. This is a global pandemic. We talk about it would take teachers out of the classroom for professional development when we already don't have enough stubs, add stress to everyone in the district. We're already in an overwhelmed system. Please stop. And then that last category about 1490 site-specific pieces of the bill, section 160.512, and goes on to state that.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. And I will say on as far as I know, in science, we received 3 letters from organizations. So the Missouri Chamber of Commerce submitted a letter on behalf of business and industry partners, STEM Pact, Casey STEM Alliance, all of these organizations. The Science Teachers of Missouri organization submitted a letter stating their stance on the topic. And then WashU has submitted a letter in regards to the science and their stance on the priority standard. So I know there's been a lot of time and energy when time and energy are not resources that are in abundance right now. So I want to appreciate that and acknowledge that people are in overdrive, and this is something that's really important if they're finding some time to provide some feedback and take away from their own families. So,
Kristen, it's Dorian.
hey.
Hey, I have a SLACA meeting on Friday, and we had slated some time to just kind of say, did anybody share feedback? If so, what kind of feedback did you share? But now I'm wondering, do I need to take that conversation in a different direction or even put it on pause? So I guess my question to you is there any additional specific feedback that we can continue to discuss even though the window has closed? Upon analysis of these 4 categories, are you seeing something that you would like more clarification on? Or is it that if this were to continue, what next steps would be helpful to ensure any implementation is successful? You know, like that kind of stuff. Is there a way to tailor that conversation that can help liaise, I guess?
So I'm positive that the link to the individual feedback surveys will be gone by then. I thought they would be gone by now, but they're still there. So I will link you in the hub to the all content hub. And if you look at any meeting in the 4 core content areas for the month of October, it will link you to the hub for that meeting, and the individual feedback links are still live.
Okay.
I'm not turning those off.
Okay.
We have feedback window posted through December 15th. So
Okay.
we're still going to collect feedback, and you guys can widely share those individual links, and we'll have that. It just won't be on the webpage. So we're still collecting feedback.
Okay, good.
But we won't really know next direction or where we're going until after the end of next week.
Okay.
So that's when we have to have our feedback compiled and presented to the leadership. So
perfect. Okay, we'll keep it on there for now then. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your question. And thank you, Kristen. I appreciate that. Anyone else, please feel free to unmute and ask a question or further the discussion. I'll give you a little more wait time to see if anyone else wants to ask a question.
Hey, Cammie, Craig
Yes, sir.
Carson. So when Dr. Hines came on to Southwest Missouri Curriculum Directors, she mentioned the developing new standards based on the priority standards. And so developing new tests based on the priority standards. And that sent multiple districts reeling with all the work they've done with the current standards. And so I think I know we had multiple districts in Southwest send letters to multiple people saying we would prefer to pump the brakes because we didn't think this was the direction of this committee. And so that is, I'm grateful to hear everything, Kristen, you just said. Thank you for summarizing that. And I know there are multiple districts down here in the Southwest that would be willing to help out in any way we can. It was a pretty solid message that we did not want to potentially end up narrowing all of our curriculum to the point that those were written. So I thank you for taking the feedback, and we look forward to working with everyone as we move forward with this.
yeah, and Craig, that conversation has come up about the assessments.
Yeah.
We've heard that, and we've heard both extremes, I guess. We've heard developing an assessment only to priority standards. And then we've had the conversation of how does that meet federal requirements? And so then we've come back to this idea of, well, is there a way to like subscore report, like assess all of the standards and subscore a report to just the priority standards? So I think that's the point that we have to figure out before we can do anything else next. And so definitely, I know the content folks here have been pushing for that purpose and that clarity to be found. So it's good to hear that the field is pushing for that too.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much, Kristen. I appreciate your taking the time to visit with us and share that information. So next we're going to kind of look at the recommendations that were made by the task force for DESE and how much progress or what we've done to further those questions that were asked. So I've kind of visited with Kristen, and we found those questions that were asked over the summer and things that we wanted DESE to work on. So I've listed those here. Provide tools and resources and assessments for districts without assessments. So that one, our MOLEAP kind of covers that. Can we develop formative assessments? That's something I think is still in the exploring stage. They're still looking at, because a lot of our attention was given to the MOLEAP blocks and assessments. The next one, a platform for repository, that we're kind of working on, and we'll look at something today. The survey we did, and I'll show you the results of that in a little bit. And the next one also goes with that survey. This next one is completed. Is there a way to find out the platforms that was on this survey? So, but again, it's not complete. Only the number of districts that replied, we have information from. The next one, is there a way to release or use items from the item bank? And that's something that's still being worked on. An optional assessment tool that are voluntary. That again is MOLEAP that we've been working on. Can DESE provide reflection questions with sample answers? That one is completed and is on our web page. I'll share in a little bit. Can DESE provide PD? So we have started that, and we have our calendar on our curriculum page. And I believe every department is now recording all of their PD so that we can have a repository that people can go back and look at. Definition of terms and resources. We have completed those, but we're still waiting for approval to post them, but I have them for you to look at today. So that's done. For acceleration of learning, our questions were, any thoughts there might be common benchmarks? Again, MOLEAP was partially our answer for that. We're still looking at other ways of doing that as well. Possibility of standardizing benchmark data. That's something that hasn't started yet. See, acceleration of learning, giving feedback to teachers. That's a local control kind of thing as well. Through quality schools, they're looking at that. The first question that teachers ask themselves, lost my place. Again, that's educator quality. So they're looking at something for that. And I haven't heard back from them. I asked for some feedback on that and didn't get a reply in time for our meeting tonight. Will this work be a living document? That will be our web page. So we have our task force on its own web page, so you can look at the information there. Ensuring that the students graduate, that's something else from quality schools that they were addressing. The continuity of learning plan, again, that was quality schools. they're in the process of working on that. Best practices. I'll find it. That is something that we do also have now a web page addressing, and is something that's ongoing through our professional development. Scope and sequence was a local control thing, so we were leaving that up to districts. Again, that kind of leads into our priority standards and that information as well. And then on reaching all students, a place on DESE's website. So we're working on something towards that I'll share with you in a little bit. Collaboration, we've sent some feelers out and asked for some information. We're waiting for feedback from some other organizations. Providing an avenue for districts to request. Again, that's something that's in progress that we're working on. The PD, again, we have our hub on the curriculum webpage and the calendar that we've started. And this removing accountability, that's something through Quality Schools again that I'm not sure if they've started on, I haven't heard back. The stimulus fund for translation services, we've looked into a couple, but we haven't really formally addressed it and gotten any feedback on that. So that's something we'll be looking into further. Certification, Educator Quality did work on that, and there is a change on their website on the GPA requirements. So that's something that's completed. And can the governor waive state statute? That's, again, Educator Quality, and I'm not sure where they stand on that at this time. So those are the things that we have attempted to address or have been working on. I wanted to give you an update in that respect, and then share some of the things that have been accomplished. So here are some websites. We have a COVID page that has links to some of the response to those questions. The supports for remote learning for districts is at this link. That's our next one is our task force for learning acceleration page. And there's also a link to our group there. Then our MoLeap page that we have. This curriculum page takes you to where our calendar is that has links to all of our professional development we've developed so far. Then we have the Trauma Informed. They have a web page for social emotional learning, and we're going to look through some of those this afternoon. Missouri Healthy Schools, they've developed a page for districts. Then we have a guide to Missouri assessment program that has some information that they have created to share with districts. And Educator Quality has created an educator growth toolbox with some professional development opportunities there that they've shared. So those are all new or revised web pages that DESE has available. And then these are the results from the survey that we sent out. So the questions that we asked, would your district be purchasing off-shelf assessment tools? Most of them said yes, 190 responses, and 175 said yes, and 15 said no. And then does your district develop assessments for common formative uses? And 113 yes, 44 no. We had 157 responses on that one. Do you have resources that you would share with colleagues in other districts? And it was 50-50, yes and no. So about half said they would, and half said they would not share them with other districts. And about the same for if they would share them with DESE to be able to send out to other districts. It was a little less than half said yes and more said no. So interesting. And will this be more or less compared to typical school years as far as using those assessments? A few said more, a few said less. Most of them said it was going to be about the same. So those are the results. And then how frequently would you assess students? 2 to 3 times was the most, 74, and then 4 to 5 times, and more than 5 times was the least amount with 39 out of 162 responses. And the last question about the budget, was that the change for your assessment process? Only 2 said that it would be eliminating all because of the budget. 5 said eliminating most. Some was 46, no assessment purchase program 7, and other was 97. So most people are doing other, and I don't know what they specified. I didn't get those results. But those are the results of the survey that we did. And we did get the written copy. So we have what districts said they are using. So we have all that listed out that we can share when it's formally approved to be shared out. All right, so back to our goal. DESE is working on those recommendations to help accelerate learning, but we still want your input on direction, what you think we need to keep doing, what we need to improve, and where you want us to move. And one thing we did do was the social emotional through our counseling department. And I wanted to share a presentation that they did. There's a recording here on YouTube that you can watch. I'm not going to share it today, but if you want to go back and hear them talk in full detail on everything they're doing. But I included their slides here so that you can see the different things that they have going on. They've addressed social emotional learning in all content areas. They have a program called REACH that goes from child to adult, addressing their social emotional needs. And they also offer monthly trainings that are open and free to everyone. They have a schedule on this webpage, the MissouriTraumaSchools.com. So they wanted me to share that and make you aware that those are there and open for all educators or anyone that wants to log on and look at them. They have curriculum for academic, career, and social emotional on their website. And they also have lesson plans that are available in all these different areas that you can click on and use in the classroom. They have some community building resources, family resources, and then again, social, emotional, and academic resources. These are other things that have been updated, and you can sign up for their listserv and get any updates and further things that they add as they're added, if you're interested. And Chrissy Bashore is the new director, and Amber Ernst is her assistant director. And they're happy to answer any questions that you may have after viewing the video and going over that information. So any questions about and comments that you would like to make about the direction we have taken on trying to meet the questions of the task force? I'm going to let you speak again now that I've talked for so long. So please join in. So if there's anything that you'd like to see us continue on, or any questions, I may not have the answers, but I'll be happy to take them back to the team, and we can answer them the next time you join in.
Cammie, Michael, I just
Yes.
appreciate all of this, the detail with this. When this group is looking, we have 528 school districts across the state, and then also all the charters, both on St. Louis and Kansas City. You could imagine just how insurmountable this information is. And this is a lot of information put together in a short period of time. We know that, there's so many what ifs, could ifs, and, uncertainty going on. So I know I appreciate it just from our standpoint when we get phone calls that I can, address somebody to our end to help with this piece with that. It's making a huge difference. And I know it's a big sacrifice on a lot of things that you all have done. So it doesn't go unnoticed what you all are doing on the back end to make this happen. That it's big when there's a few people doing a lot of this work. So very much appreciated on all the vendors that are also stepping up to the plate, knowing that assessments are critical. That's a big piece for what we did. I lived that world for 7 years in North Kansas City, and I know how important it is, but we got to take care of the child first too. So well done.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. But we know there's more to do, and we need guidance. So that's part of the reason for this group. So if there are needs in your districts and needs that you hear of, things that we need to focus on, we need your input. We need you to tell where we need to keep working.
Yeah, I appreciate the update. This is Shanika. I appreciate the update and knowing that, the work wasn't just thrown out there and not looked at again.
Yes.
It's always a great thing when you have a group and, things start to happen. Sometimes, things get dropped or other priorities come up. So I appreciate that.
Thank
and
you.
we all have unique issues or things that we're dealing with, such as charter schools with assessments. There are a number of charter schools going up for renewal this year, and there's no assessment for last year, or there's nothing for us to gauge. So we're starting another baseline, and it's it's a little frustrating, but everyone has something to deal with, and so just knowing that we're still moving forward and working on things is helpful.
Good.
So Cami, I want to, sorry if this was already said, but and I don't know how many of you listen to the State Board of Education meetings, but Shanika, what you just said made me think about that. So when we were listening to the board meeting last month, they talked about how MoLeap was going to be available again. And I know many of you on the call were districts who probably didn't utilize that resource. And that, in case you don't know what it is, the MoLeap assessment was the look back assessment that was available through like October 10th or something. So the announcement from Dr. Hines was that MoLeap was going to be available again in some sort of testing window. To my knowledge, that window hasn't been defined yet, but it would be an on-grade level window. So Shanika, if your kids, your fourth graders needed to test and have some sort of benchmark, that would be available. And DESE would be providing the scoring and all of that for that assessment. So it would be available grades 3 through 8, and then basically the MAP and EOC tested subjects. So Cami, I apologize if you shared that last month.
No, I didn't, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Some of our schools did participate in the MoLeap, not all of them. I can't say all the schools did, but some of them did participate, and they also have their own interim assessments, but it's just, we can tell them that it may be a good idea if you if you take advantage of this MoLeap.
Now I'll be, we're being honest here. I'll be honest. It's a lot. It's a lot for a kid to sit and do, and especially for those little ones to do in 5th grade. I'm just thinking, we have science, we have math, we have ELA. That's a lot of time. So something that I don't know if I should be advocating for or not officially, but thinking about how you could use that. So more specifically, I'm familiar with like the writing prompt in ELA. That doesn't mean you have to give your kids all 3 sessions. Sign your kids up and let them just do the essay and let people score it. Or in science, just pick a couple of the task-based items. And so on my end, you know, something I'm thinking about working with Lisa Serino and Sean on is, can we put out like a item analysis, like question 1 is aligned to these standards, and here's like a, you know, questions 1 through 8 are associated with a passage, and these are standalones, so you could identify which ones you want your kids to do, and like really make it, you know, you guys spoke and wanted this bank, and while that seems like a huge undertaking to move a big boulder here at the state for some reason, can you make this MoLeap work as that? So think about looking into maybe just using bits and pieces of MoLeap so that it works for you and your kids.
Good information.
Hey, Cammie, you'd mentioned wanting input on
Yes.
continuing to move forward.
Yes, ma'am.
So one thing that I often find, and what we're really discussing here is, okay, so we have our data wherever it came from. What do we do with this? And so it's the difference between PLC Lite and PLCs, and
Yes.
you know, how do you respond? And so the huge part of acceleration is not just gathering the data on what prerequisites are lacking, but filling those gaps in, you know, prior to delivery of grade level content. And so, and feel free to scroll back through any of those if this was on there and I just missed it, but you know, where might this group be able to support instruction and effective scaffolding and working through a learning progression and you know, things like that? Like how do we close the gap? Because
Right.
just knowing the standard and where we're supposed to be, and then the assessment that tells us if we're there or not, that just informs us as the adults, but it doesn't necessarily help guide the students along that learning progression. So moving forward, I might recommend looking at some of those options, either in content meetings or professional development modules or professional development, you know, sessions or things like that, of how do you scaffold for a concept such as this?
That sounds
How
good.
do you build in that background knowledge, and where do the students need to come? You know, how do they need to get there?
Yes. And that kind of leads me into the next slides I want to share. I have been working on a repository for us. And if you go, it's in Wakelet. And if you go to this link, you don't have to sign up or anything. That link entitles you to be able to participate, but I wanted to open it up and show it to you. Let me see if I can get it to work here. Hopefully you see this screen. There we go. So do you see the screen opening up with the repository? Okay, so I have put, this is kind of the summary of our task force. It takes you to the task force page. The first one are, if you have questions or needs, you can put them there. Then there's a whole, I took everything from our task force over the summer, all the links and things that everyone added, and everything that we had in the repository already, and then things that people have been sharing with me as school has started. So we have social emotional health, resources for all students, resources for at-risk students, for English learners, for those with IEP or 504s, gifted and talented, some resources for families. And the big one is tools and resources for teachers and administrators. So there are a lot of things in that one. I'm going to click, well, I'll go with finish here. And then assessment resources. I'll click on this for teachers and administrators, and it has several different ones within it. So we have the opportunity myth and the AMIs there, and then some ideas for restart and recovery, some links for virtual and distance learning, some links on equity, and then these are a lot of professional development sites and things on DESE. And I don't remember who shared the Mo Charter Schools. I think this was you, Shanika, and those links don't work any longer. So, oh, she just came back in. She's got knocked off. So Shanika, I was just talking to you. I think you shared the Mo Charter Schools information and those links no longer work. So I left those separate. But I need to visit with you on those again because that's a not working link.
Okay. Okay.
So if you click where it says at the top, Edit Connect Collection, you can add things to this. You can't take anything off, but you can add anything that you have for your district, or in the section where it says if you have questions, they can add questions that they may have. So on that link. In the assessment resources, the first thing that I added there was someone had something about an assessment bank. I don't know if this is something that we can use, but if they want to add things there, I created that just if in case. But then there's a link to our assessment page, and then all of those things again that were shared during our task force, and then things that have been sent to me or come across my desk as the year's gone through. But you are welcome to explore this and add to and use whatever you find there. On our note catcher, I put spaces for you to add comments on all of the sections. So at the repository, if you have suggestions or comments as you look at it, please put those there, and I'll fix it however that it best serves our needs, and we'll make those adjustments. And then there's also on the repository, on the note catcher, if you have other topics for next meeting that you think we need to address, or a question that you have, or a need that you have, or you have in your district, if you will add things there as well. But the repository link, yes, ma'am, I can put that in the chat. It is on the slide here. Let me get that to everybody. It's on the note taker as well at the top where next to where it says repository. But there you go. But please take a look at that and give me input, and we'll go from there. And then Kristen wants to make another comment. She has something else to share. You want to share your screen?
Well, I was just saying, back to the idea of working on some lessons and accelerating and closing the gap.
Mhm.
Something that has come up in the field is around MoLeap blocks.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you guys have had a chance to dig into those really or not. But one school district reached out and said, in science, we did an example of WaterWise. And so we created a jam board, and all the participants were kind of, acting as students. And then we came together and had like a city council meeting and kind of laid it all out. And so one thing that they were requesting was MoLeap is great in a PDF, but like all that you did extra to get it to where it was like ready to use with kids, is there any way you can do that? So there are a few, but you guys know the time that goes into that. So there are a few, but that was a need that people, and I don't know if people would be more apt to using them, if they'd be helpful, if that work was done in your districts or not, but that was something that I'm hearing that we don't have the bandwidth, especially with priority standards, to be doing all of that as well. And then another thing
Kristen, I've made you a co-host if you want to share.
Okay. The other thing sorry, I'm sure everybody's just thrilled to be learning all about science, but the other thing that we've done in science is we have the Investigations Beyond the Classroom page that we started with some safety recommendations, but as well, Dorian, what I was getting at, what I wanted to see was their sample lessons. And so I'm wondering if what you're kind of thinking is that AMI of looking do these lessons that we have linked to, which there's like 340 science lessons, but they tried to like asterisk if it's something that can be done outside of brick and mortar. And so I'm wondering if some of this is what you're thinking, or if you're thinking what you're thinking.
So I feel like it's almost like we've forgotten how to strategically design instruction, purposeful instruction. You know, like I feel like I'm going back to Madeline Hunter some days, you know, where it's like, okay, guys, what's your learning purpose? And how do you know for sure that your instructional steps along the way are going to help with that? And when acceleration is needed because one of those bricks has fallen because of the lack of that background knowledge or the lack of that access to grade level material. And then all of a sudden we sometimes blame it on remote instruction. It's like, well, they're at home, they're learning independently. You're right, they are at home learning independently sometimes. And so what scaffolds are you putting in place to support them? Because scaffolds and deliberate planning is needed more now than ever. And so that's just what I'm seeing here, is that we've kind of forgotten purposeful design. Like I think that maybe this could be, yes, I know, I know it, Sherry. I just feel like we've forgotten how to teach, how to take an overarching concept and break it down into smaller steps along the way. And so if this can serve as a model perhaps for what a strategically designed lesson looks like, perhaps that would be, I would need to dig into this a little bit more. But I feel like we are expecting our students to be much further along than they should be. 1, as children, 2, as learners new to a concept, and 3, all of that in the middle of a pandemic, learning independently at home. And so I don't know if that's beyond what we're talking about here, but that's what I'm facing in my district, is that our kids are failing. They're failing, and it's because we don't have our ducks in a row. Like, we've not come to the table ready to teach. And so when I think about departmental supports and where you guys might be able to support a district, I know that's something that, I mean, we literally did an article study on scaffolding. I mean, we stepped it back to block 1 of pedagogy and just said, guys, project-based learning is fantastic, and inquiry-based activities are absolutely critical for students, but we still have to focus on where students might get hung up, and we need to be there before they do, you know, and that is what acceleration is. So, yeah. So, yes, maybe.
Yes. Yeah. And Sherry's right. We need to avoid the deficit-based approach.
I agree 100% with exactly what you're saying. And that's kind of been our focus in working with CSI schools and really helping them to dial it all the way back and sit in with them to talk about what do students even need to be able to do in order to be successful in this particular lesson. Like, can you list what skills they need to have in order to do this? And now let's look and see if they have those. That when you talked about actually utilizing the assessment to design the learning, that's how it's supposed to be used. So yes, we're testing kids, and yes, teachers are looking at data in PLCs, but they're not taking the next step in designing the instruction based on the data. They're just looking at the data, the number of kids who are proficient and the number of kids who are basic and below basic, and then they're or either they're remediating. And so then they're taking everything back. Instead of talking about how do we scaffold the learning for the ones who did not get the concept, and we can identify which concept because we're analyzing the data, and how do we go back and make sure that they get that particular concept without bringing the whole group all the way back and holding them back. So how do we build that into the learning experience? And I think that that is the piece that's missing. So even as we look at this, and I can see on this, whatever that is up on the screen, it has prior knowledge, but even necessary skills, like if it can break it down to what are the necessary skills that students must have in order to be successful with this particular lesson.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was kind of looking at the same thing at what Sherry was saying about not a deficit-based approach, but a strength-based approach. I think too, like, we need to also be thinking about empowerment. So like if your students are working independently more, That's our reality right now. And so that's not going to change anytime soon, doesn't feel like. And so, and we don't really want it. We don't want a loss of independence for students, or autonomy, or self-efficacy for students. And so I think that's kind of what Sherry is getting at, is how do we build up strengths that students have, or how do we help equip them with skills, like Lisa was just saying, so that they can access any content. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter kind of where you are, but what am I doing purposefully as the learning facilitator in the room to help you attack something like a MOLE block, which is a large culminating kind of project or approach. And I don't know if we've got those pieces kind of, we don't have those pieces in place, you know, across the board.
And also those pieces have to be built into the learning experience, because most kids are not accustomed to tackling the problems that are presented in the MOLE blocks. I would say most of the schools that I'm working with, the kids are not equipped to deal with those. And then to ask them to sit down, when we talk about that MOLE assessment, to take it all as a test, stamina is an issue. And so some kids tap out just because of stamina, so you don't even really get an idea of what they really know. And so we've talked to teachers about, in schools, about taking pieces of that assessment and doing it in small guided groups, you know, where they're doing it with the guidance of a teacher and they're working through those things. Take a problem and present it as problem of do now, and then have them work on it independently, and then come back and have the teacher to then model that, so they can start understanding how to answer a problem written with that level of rigor, because they're not accustomed to it.
So maybe some of our PD needs to be focused more in the step and process of creating lessons.
Yeah, and that I would say from districts that I've heard from, a lot are saying, you know, we didn't have well-defined curriculum before. And when I say, you know, of course they've got the curriculum framework, but the day-to-day parts of the curriculum weren't well-defined before. And now it's even harder because we're not necessarily face-to-face with them. And we may be, but like it keeps getting said over and over again. It's like I take home everything because tomorrow might be a snow day, right? I might not see my kids. And so that sort of constant planning, and you guys know, snow day was usually a packet or, you know, something. It wasn't a full-on teaching lesson. And so I hear what you're saying, and I think it's a need, but it's at the state level. I guess I'm struggling with navigating that tension of local control. And definitely, I think I could say for the people on the call, with the priority standards, I've gotten a lot of, you know, at what point is local control? So definitely framing, I think, and feeling out that, is this really something that they need? And will it be seen as us overstepping into that local control space? And I think, again, it's all in how you frame it, right? If it's a recommended piece, or if it's just an optional, like out here for you to use type of thing.
I worry too, because like Sherry mentioned in I blame teachers, may teachers. And, you know, as much as I appreciate lots and lots of cute graphics, I super do. I agree. I feel, but I worry even with these pre-made lessons that you're dangerously close to the same kind of thing, where it's like, just pick this up and deliver it word for word, but we don't necessarily remember, at what point am I revisiting the learning target and connecting it to the learning progression? Where am I pre-teaching vocabulary? Where is my word wall, my purposeful word wall? You know, where are opportunities for student reflection? And I know that's the difference between a unit and a daily lesson plan, but I believe that is the breakdown. It is the pre-made lesson that, you know, it is great. It has lots of best practices in these pre-made lessons from all different sources, but it still has to come out of the teacher's mouth, you know, in the classroom. And if students could be independent, we would need to be here. We could just pump these out and send these home with kids. But there's still the facilitator, the Sherpa in the room who, you know, kind of takes them on that journey. And I think that we're missing some of those things about where's our place in this. And how do we support success on some really awesome designs of lessons, you know, of units, but that's not your daily delivery of it? Where is your strategic instructional design in there?
And that's too where I think that Valerie's getting to this point, and maybe Craig, you too, in saying like this,
Yes.
like we can pump out and pump out and pump out, but we've come to the same conclusion. Like we can have, and there was I can't remember his name, was our interface keynote math guy. Oh my gosh, how horrible. But last year he had this whole presentation about sheep, right? And so we can easily count sheep, and that's what we were getting used to, just having kids like in math, highlight and circle, highlight what you know, circle what you don't know, all that type of thing. And they weren't thinking, it was just out of habit. And so we know that the power doesn't come in just a high quality task. The power comes in the PD behind that, right? So the instruction that goes along with teaching teachers how to use these materials. And so I think I hear that high quality materials are needed, but we need the PD and the momentum of support. And so, and Craig, your point, I agree wholeheartedly. It starts at the district, and maybe the state we just house a repository that's a central location or something, or maybe not even that. Maybe another organization does that, but so that folks can feel the power of the districts. You guys have the students with you every day. I can't tell you, besides my own, the last time I got to see a student. So thinking of ways how we can provide that PD on those best practices and these high quality materials might be a next step.
Now, Cammie, am I remembering correctly? It seems I'm thinking about the task force, and I thought that was one of the recommendations that came from the task force, was having some PD that can be accessed by for teachers by them.
Yes.
On different like exactly what we're talking about, where they would be able to access, even if it wasn't offered within their district, there would be a repository or something where they could get.
And so on the PD page within that Wakelet, that's kind of was the thinking that I was having. If you've recorded something, or if you have something that you can share, put it in there. Any kind of links that would be good examples of what we're wanting to see. So hopefully we'll get some people sharing things in there. But yes, great ideas.
One other thing too, I think that I know in our subgroup of work group 2, we talked about priority standards, and I think it was Deb Yonke that shared all of her district's work that they had done is down to like specific slides and article reviews and things that their group had done. And one of their presentations even had like a facilitator guide, so that if somebody in the district were to pick it up and do it with their district. So I found that helpful. I don't know if it would be, if you guys think it would be helpful, but maybe that's sort of an idea to think about. I know I have a couple for science that I've stole that idea from Deb and picked up on, so I'll be glad to share those if they're needed.
Sounds great. Well, we are at our hour's time, but I'm not going to stop if you have more comments, but if you have something to say, go ahead. But if we are finished, then I will call it a day.
Well, I'm going to throw us off just a tad, not off maybe,
Sure.
but just throw something else out. I am looking for, I've had several Southwest Missouri leaders ask me in a couple of conversations, what resources, articles, what are ways that they can use with the leaders in their district to turn the corner from COVID to leadership, from COVID to learning. So if any of you have something out there, know of an article or something that I can share with Southwest Missouri leaders, that the things I've shared, like Doug Reeves, the 100-Day Leadership, I have 2 or 3 articles. So I've got some things I've shared, but frankly, none of us liked any of them. So we did share, and these are good districts that I'm talking about. So it's not that they're any of the bad districts, but these are good leaders that we would go to and ask for direction statewide. And none of us have a really good resource to share with our leaders underneath us on how do we turn the corner from COVID to actual educational leadership again.
There are a few articles on the tools and resources for teachers. A few under the Restart and Recovery. I think there's one from CCSSO on there that was really good. You might check some of the things that are found in there.
And TNTP has some good resources
Yes,
as
they
well.
do.
I was getting ready to post
And
a couple of those.
CREB.
Also, a good resource would be your RPDC person
Yes.
region that works through MLDS. That's their total focus is on leadership development. So they should be working with principals in your area who've signed up for MLDS, and it's free. There's no cost to it. They have about 5, in all of our meetings, I can speak for the St. Louis region, have been about decision-making, delegation. What do you look for in the virtual settings, you know, adjusting walkthrough forms to match the setting that their schools are using right now. I mean, it's all about getting it back to the academic focus and off of COVID.
And I'm going to concur with Lisa with the Kansas City. The MLDS is a really good resource. It's all free. We've had several our targeted schools. We have over 95 that are implemented with us. And just concur with what Lisa said. We're doing this statewide. All of the MLDS are pretty much on the same page, so it looks uniform at all the 9 regions for the state of Missouri.
And well, if you have links for things like that, add them to our list.
We'll do
Share
it.
with everybody. Sounds great. Thank you, Craig, for that, bringing that up. All right. Please go back and add into the note catcher anything you might think of as you ponder on this over the next month. If you have something that comes up you think we should discuss next month, and I'm not sure what we're going to talk about the next time. I'm thinking about inviting someone in to speak about our English language learners, because I've been getting a whole lot of calls on that area. So, but anything you think we might need to talk about or address, please add them to our note taker. I'll check it as the month goes along and see where we are.
Hey, Tammy, there is one thing. I don't know if Sherry is still on the call. She hung up, but there is an Elevate virtual conference for EL. Okay, so
Yes.
you had that link on there. Okay.
Yes. It's on our calendar. I think it's on our calendar. If not, I'll add it. Thank you for bringing that up, Lisa. All right. Well, if there's no other comments, then please add to that note taker, and I'll check that out and see you next time. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate you. Thank you again, Kristen.
Bye.